The Red Gold and Bold podcast is live once again. Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, Soren Petro with you as we talk some Chiefs football. We talked about the free agents that were incoming here a couple of days ago. Now, how about the ones that are going out and what's left to do? We'll talk about where the Chiefs need to look right now. A couple more minor signings have been made by the Kansas City Chiefs, but losing Brian Cook, Jalen Watson, Leo Chenal, Isaiah Pacheco, Josh Williams, pretty much that whole 2022 draft class has walked out the door for a lot of money. We'll discuss that. Trent McDuffie's big deal was something the Chiefs could have stomached, and how this all affects the Kansas City Chiefs draft. We do it right here, right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it as we get things started, gentlemen, with a little conversation about where the Chiefs are right now, what's still left to do. We know they got Kenneth Walker, the big running back signing, Alohi Gilmore, the safety, Kyrus Tanya, the defensive tackle. Those are the big additions. But now they've lost a lot. They've lost a lot of that 22 draft class, which we'll get to in a little bit. But rattled off some of the names, Sam. You know, we know defensive end, edge is going to be the obvious spot. And we'll talk about how that affects the draft and where they go with that. But what else are they working on to try to put this roster together before they go to St. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, right now, Felix Anudike-Uzomah's third on the depth chart at edge rusher. So,
and when you say third, you mean as in 1 and 2 start?
Yes, yeah,
third
exactly.
is next man up. Yeah, to be clear, not third string right
top,
at the end.
Top backup. I mean, they were 19th in pressure rate for a team that blitzed the third most in the league last year. So, like, this was the primary priority going in. And the fact that they still haven't addressed it, I mean, we'll get to their draft plans, but I think it's perhaps a tell that that's what they think the draft could potentially produce for them, but they still need depth there. And like wherever else they need, that's far and away number one. But I still do think that they've got other needs as well. I mean, we'll also get to the draft class in this, but that group was 49-12 for the first 3 seasons. And 9 of those 10 guys or 8 of them are for sure gone. And so, like, you've got a lot of supporting cast to replace now.
Yeah, no doubt, as is the thought process here in the chat room as DB, DND, tackle, tight end, wide receiver. The roster is Swiss cheese. Need 4 DBs. I don't think at least our listenership here on the Red, Gold, and Bold is making any assumptions that it's all fixed, that it's all solved. Jeff, what do they need to keep working on? They did sign it was Emery DeMercado, running back. Peter Cole didn't play last year, a corner. I saw where some of the lower end kind of I would think that those guys have a decent chance to make the roster just based upon what they have right now, but there is still a lot of work to be done, Jeff.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you watch the last 3 games of the season, you realize that there's a lot of a lack of talent in some key areas on this team. And so not only you're talking about people leaving that we'll get to in a second here, but just the amount of depth they have to start creating on this roster. I don't know what the exact number is, but you look at their depth chart and you, as Sam said, you go beyond some of the names you recognize, and it's a lot of people you've never heard of before. And so that's got to change fairly, in the next few months. But overall, I think it's, look, every team is in this situation at some point when they've had the kind of run this team has had, or the kind of success, not the kind of run specifically. And so it's a nice it's a nice time to start thinking about your future. And so obviously edge, linebacker with Chanel leaving, corner is still in play, safety. The running back situation is a little bit more interesting now with the signing of DeMercado, because I wonder if that means they won't be as high on taking a running back in the draft, but he's more of a special teams guy as well. But receiver too. I mean, so you're going to have to find a lot of players, because we know injuries happen. We know how they looked when some of the frontline starters weren't getting it done, and there's still a lot more work to be done, as you said.
Yeah. Sam, what do you think about these last couple signings? I mean, they are guys that have produced. I mean, here Brent mentions, that DeMercado's had a little bit of success in the NFL, and I do agree he's more of a special teams guy, but he has had some success. Cole started, I think it was 38 games in his career at cornerback. He's coming off a knee injury, didn't play at all last year. So, but he is a guy that has some experience. I think you're seeing them grab. You want to, look, you're probably going to sign for the league minimum wherever you go. You want to do it for the Kansas City Chiefs and play with Patrick Mahomes, or you want to take your chances someplace else. And if you'll sign, the Chiefs will have you. But I mean, we are talking about there can't be that much money. Now, all the details of the contracts aren't in yet as to how much they backloaded things to fit everybody in, but there can't be a lot of money to be signing anyone else of note. Or I don't know, you think I'm wrong? You think that they've carved out enough that there could still be a signing that's a little bit more significant?
Well, I mean, the way free agency works is all the big names are off the board. I mean, so they can't get somebody that's like top of market significant. I mean, I'd be surprised if they're still not looking for other pieces, especially at the position we just mentioned. Like, even if you think the draft is strong, you still need depth at that spot. But look, with these two signings, I think they make a lot of sense. I mean, the cornerback has played 75% of his snaps in the slot. And I think when you look at this group, you think Will Williams, you'd rather not play in the slot, and Christian Fulton, if that's winds up being your starter, you'd rather he not play in the slot. So, like, you need competition at slot cornerback specifically, and why not take a risk on a guy that's going to come cheap because of an injury and just see what his health is. With the running back, my first thought is I would have loved to have been in the room when Eric Bieniemy is looking at the film of this guy, because he's the guy who dropped the ball at the half-yard line, and I.
What would Eric Bieniemy have done in that situation, Jeff? Do you think you could keep him off the field?
Yeah,
you put up that comment.
Player. Out the field, off the player. It might
you
be
put up that comment about his 40, 50, and 70-yard runs. Well, I guess he needed 71 on that. So the old 70 non-touchdown run.
Yeah, they're tough. They're tough to.
No big deal. It only cost him a game. But
yeah, but it does continue to point to the idea that they are done with all of last year's running backs. We know Isaiah Pacheco's already signed with the Lions on just barely more than a league minimum deal, and this would tend to point itself. I actually think the Kareem Hunt signing, the fact that Kareem Hunt's probably not coming back is as much tied to Khyiris Tonga's fullback play with the Patriots, that this is their fullback on short yardage, is their defensive tackle, and but.
You think Tonga's going to replace Kareem Hunt?
No, he's going to. He's that play, having him come in and lead block for any running back is going to be their solution for the 1-yard Kareem Hunt dive. Will be Tonga on a lead, and actually having a fullback back there would be my guess. But
I think as of right now, we are going, and this falls into the same category about what's still left to do. I think as of right now, we might be talking about short yardage again next year, in a way that we haven't had to the last 2 years, because Kareem Hunt's been so effective with it that it just becomes this non-discussion point. But I feel like with the group they have right now, because Kenneth Walker didn't play a lot of third downs, and it seems like we might all of a sudden be talking about short yardage issues again if they don't make another move.
I'll give you a peek under the covers for one of my bold and daring predictions. Khyiris Tonga scores a touchdown. I mean, I do think that you're number one. I get two chances at it. One, maybe falls on a fumble off a sack strip in the end zone or something. But two, I actually do think that in the back of their head, they're like, okay, we have our short yardage fullback without having to use a roster spot on it. And I actually think it's valuable. And I actually think it's going to be what a lot of teams do. If you can't come up with a role for a fullback, an all-around fullback, then having a guard or a defensive tackle or something along those lines that can come in and just fire out into the hole and knock some people down, I don't think is a bad strategy for roster construction. But I don't mean to get bogged down on the running of Khyiris Tonga.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but like a gimmick play is different than, Kareem Hunt had like 34 first downs on short yardage last year.
Yeah, but I think he
is that going to work 34 times?
I'm going to look it up, but I think his offensive stats were higher than you might think.
Tonga?
I'm talking about success rate here. I'm not talking about quantity. I'm talking about quality. Like he ran for first downs on short yardage at a higher rate than the tush push, and he had 34 first downs on it. Like this was not a small sample size.
Trying to look and see. Got his defenses. I hadn't looked this up, so I may be totally out to lunch. But in my head, I thought I'd heard that he had over 30 snaps on offense.
So it's more like the guy the Chargers have, Matlock, huh? I thought it was more like 10, but
I did not look it up,
like
so I 100% reserve the right to be completely wrong on this. Backfield, 15 in the backfield. So, one a game, roughly.
That's still a decent amount.
I mean, he can do it. I mean,
he'll have more short yardage carries than Patrick Mahomes. I bet you that. I'll go with that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you guys, like, how big of a – to me, that's one of the concerns about the roster is what they do on short yardage. I guess, with you mentioning him, how precipitous of a drop do you think their success will be with short yardage?
Well, Kareem Hunt was definitely their best back for it, so I think they take a step back from it. And Kenneth Walker's style is not, the patience in the backfield is not always the right way to go on 3rd and 1. It's more about quickly assess where the weakness is in the line, get your shoulders down, have a good leg drive, and shove the weakness back and make sure you get the first down. So I think they definitely do. Kareem Hunt has a knack for that. It's obvious, but I also think that's one of the few times that they actually let their line fire out. And I think that offensive line is more inclined to be good at that. So I think they got better on the offensive line, and on that play, it actually, when you're doing just a quick dive play or you're doing some kind of power run, it adheres itself to what they do well. So I don't think the drop off will be like. I think it'll be somewhere in between the success rate they had and my God, they can't convert anything. I think they'll be more average-ish at that point. But if your roster is constructed to convert 3rd and 1 all the time and be great at, they were great at the short yards last year, and they still sucked offensively. Right? Like there is the big picture of.
So don't be good on 3rd and 1.
No, there's I don't. Yeah, not converting, but the idea is to not end up in 3rd and 1. The idea is to get 12 yards in the first 2 downs.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
That's the concept of it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think you have a valid point.
And I don't want to make it seem like this is top of list. I'm just saying I do think it's a thing when I look at this latest backfield signing is like I kind of like, I don't think that guy fits that exact role either.
Yeah. I think the point is like this is all their additions are about speed and explosiveness, right? This guy who runs a 4.42, and so they want guys who can get, as the commenter said, 40, 50, 70-yard run. They want that element.
Yeah, and which is not the direction that everybody else is going, which we've talked about a lot. We'll see if this ends up working. All right, we want to get into the guys they've lost and what that means. We'll do it after we hear from our friends at GAN. Concrete season is in full swing and asphalt paving is revving up. So right now is the time to get your property on the schedule with GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Whether you need new concrete work, a parking lot repaved, crack filling, seal coating, or full asphalt installation, their experienced crews handle it all right here in Kansas City. Don't wait until the rush hits. Call today for a free bid and secure your spot before the calendar fills up. Get the process started right now at GANasphalt.com. That's GANasphalt.com. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, let's talk a little bit about who is moving on. Some of the deals. I want to start interesting. I think there's a little bit to zero in on Brian Cook. 3 years, $40 million, but of note, and this got publicized right away. Year one of the deal is $18 million, meaning almost half of the money is up in year one, which I think is one smart roster construction. I think it's at some point somebody, and it's not going to be the Chiefs while Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback because they've already set their path on how they have to structure their contracts. They're always waiting for the cap to go up to fit what they've already spent under the cap. But somebody who's in a rebuild mode and slashes and burns all the veterans and resets their cap is going to start front loading contracts because it gives you a position to, one, always have more cap room later on. It means you got to spend more up front, and it means you might get burnt on a deal, but it means you're going to be cheaper on the other end of each contract. It also means that every player you have becomes eminently more valuable in a trade because the team that's bringing him in is taking on, one, less cash, but two, also less cap room. And that's what the Bengals have done here. Now, I think the reason the Bengals did it was this, to me, is the sign that it's the Chiefs, the one guy out of everyone that they've lost, unless we find out there's some other contract structure like this, that's the poison pill to keep the Chiefs from being able to sign him, or somebody to be able to sign Brian Cook. There was clearly competition there. And by making the biggest number the first number, it gets harder for everybody to fit it in because usually every contract is backloaded. You guys agree? Sam, I'll start with you. Brian Cook, what looks like, based on that, was maybe the guy they wanted to keep the most?
Well, I know they were still having conversations with Leo Chenal as well during the free agency period. So I don't know if I would say most, but I do think when you look at the pure AAV of all the deals, that the Cook one is perhaps the most attractive of the Chiefs free agents that are leaving. There's some of the free agency deals with the Chiefs that I'm like, I don't know what film you were watching last year. I mean, Minshew potentially getting like 6 guaranteed and up to 8. It's just like, I know he got hurt in the Titans game. Did you watch the plays before he got hurt? Like that number surprised me. There's some other numbers that surprised me as well, but the Cook one I thought was in a free agency period that's always hard to find reasonableness. I thought that one looked the most reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me, Jeff, Brian Cook leaving. You know, they've walked on safeties before. Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reed. They're walking on it now. They have another veteran that they're bringing in. Brian Cook wasn't a veteran that they brought in to replace Justin Reed, but they're bringing Gilman in to replace. But does Cook look like the one that was maybe the hardest to say goodbye to?
I wouldn't go that far. I think a lot of that deal that he got wasn't just about the money, and I don't think they should have paid that kind of money for him. But too, he's born in Cincinnati. He played college football in Cincinnati. There's, he's going home. Just a McDuffie going back to LA. There's a lot of value in that for a player. And the Bengals made it clear at the combine they were ready to spend money. They had salary cap space, $55 million, somewhere around that amount, and they were going to go out and they were going to go find some defenders. And so you see Boye Mafe coming in, you see Jonathan Allen coming in, and Brian Cook was a player on the back end that they wanted to find a safety to pair with Jordan Battle because they liked their young corners, Daxton Hill and DJ Turner, a couple of Michigan guys who were pretty fast. But people kind of don't realize that this team defensively played much better in the second half of the season. A lot of talk about how bad they've been in that department the last few years, but they have improved a lot. And so letting Trey Henderson walk and then making these kind of moves, I think Brian Cook saw going home as a thing, the money as a thing, but he also saw this defense probably can work for me. They want guys who can be versatile and be leaders.
Sam, Jalen Watson, 3 for 51. Leo Chenal, 3 for almost 25. What's your reaction to those contracts? And did the Chiefs have an opportunity? Do you think those are numbers that they could have matched if they really wanted to?
I really don't. I mean, Jalen Watson's 28. He'll open the season 28. I don't know when exactly his birthday is, but this is I think a group that the three of us have pretty frequently talked about the Chiefs needing to get to their next wave. And I've always argued this is the third wave, not the second. I think once you traded Tyreek Hill, that became a new iteration of this era. And now you're in a third one because you're losing this 2022 draft class. And I don't think moving on to the next wave entails signing a cornerback 28, 29, and 30, a position that you've pointed out more than anyone, Soren, needs to get younger. And so, like, I think Jalen Watson had a terrific year. Never a better time for him to be entering free agency than this year. They'll miss the production he had a year ago, but it's just not an effort I would have made. And the sense of, because I have seen some sentiment out there that the Jalen Watson was an affordable deal. The sense of, trading away Trent McDuffie, and obviously you would have had to give him an extension, but technically he's on, what was it, $14 million with his fifth-year player option, and turning around and paying Jalen Watson 17. I think that would have been hard to square.
Yeah, I agree. Do you, Jeff, like one of these look like ones that maybe the Chiefs are going to regret letting go?
I don't see any of them on that list being regrettable. I think the point to be made about Jalen Watson is that the Rams are going to get the two best years of him in one, at least in a championship window. The Chiefs doing that same deal, they're probably not going to be championship caliber during that time. So a lot of times what people see the money part of it, but it's also the scenario you're going into, the situation you're going into that matters. And so for the Rams, that's an easy deal to stomach. If you're the value Jalen Watson brings is he allows Trent McDuffie to be where he needs to be, is in the slot. To be here, playing on a team that we just talked about, all the holes he has here, that doesn't really help you. He's not impactful in that way that you're going to get a couple more wins out of him being on the field. So that made sense. I was happy for Chanel. I thought he would go someplace where I thought New England would be the place he'd wind up, but Washington makes sense because they have a lot of money and they've lost a lot of linebackers. He's a versatile player for them. He can be a versatile player for them. But yeah, nobody else on it. Pacheco, certainly not. Josh Williams. I mean, the Menahue, nobody else on this list really are they going to be upset about leaving.
4 for 124 on Trent McDuffie. We've talked a lot. Anybody who's listened to this podcast knows we've talked about signing Trey Smith and Nick Bolton and the money they gave. Really, that's the day that they walked on Trent McDuffie, was when they decided to make those deals. There was going to be no way to keep Trent McDuffie. I mean, now that we see the number, now that we see, like, you get, if you're available, you're going to get the biggest check. I think this is also a reflection. I think some credit does need to be given to Brett Veach and his staff, that they read the market, that there was no corner that was just available in free agency that was even going to approach. Like, they read who was going to be out there, and so making him available in trade made him instantly the number one corner to come get. There's times where you're like, okay, we got this guy and he's really good and you can trade for him. And they're like, there's 3 guys I can sign in free agency that are about as good. I don't need to give you a pick and pay all this money. Like we talked about the deal. We were all impressed with the haul that they got as far as the picks, but now that it actually becomes, $31 million per, $100 million guaranteed. How much credit do you give to them reading the market, Sam? And is there any shock on the sticker price that the Rams ended up paying?
Yeah, I think a little bit, but I mean, you've related this back to the Trent or to the Trey Smith deal and the Nick Bolton deal. We've all done that. I look at now what the Chiefs got in return for trading Trent McDuffie, and then what he subsequently cost in LA, and said, I think you make that deal regardless of your cap situation. Like, this is good business, because paying Trent McDuffie, especially when he plays frequently in the slot, $30 million, and at the expense of giving up a first-round pick and 3 other picks, like, I'd rather have that side of the equation regardless of what your cap situation is. And man, it's hard to find someone who likes Trent McDuffie more than I do. But that's just the way I feel about the other side of the coin. And so I wonder what the Chiefs would have done if they were not pushed into this corner this year, because I think this should remind the Chiefs that there's good business to be had, even if it's not necessary business to be had.
The Chiefs kicked the tires on getting him signed last summer, right? Like in training camp, they had talked to him, and they had a ballpark on what it was going to take. And, my understanding is that Trey Smith was asking for 23, the same time Creed Humphrey got signed. They knew where the franchise tag was going to be. The Chiefs didn't get it done, so they wait a year. Then they put the franchise tag on him. Then they ultimately end up giving the price that CAA, and that's the agency for him, and Trey Smith was asking for. Well, they went down that same road, and I think, again, same agency, it was pretty clear. This is what it's going to take. You can let him play, and I think most people think that he wasn't going to hold out if the Chiefs had kept him and played him on $13 million. But, like, there is a lesson to be had here, Jeff, and, like, that's how that agency works. So you either, if you have a player, you either need to trade him or you need to make him the highest paid in his position, or you're going to be in a contract squabble. And, at some point, somebody's going to just hold out. You're going to have the Chris Jones situation. But I do think there is a lesson to be learned about at least the agency and how it's worked with those two players the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to know what the Chiefs thought his value was. Like, how high would they be willing to go? Would it have been 25, 26 million a year? Like, I don't think it would be 30, obviously. But and there's a valid argument to be made that he's not a $30 million a year corner. He's a very specific niche player for what the Rams want or what the Giants would use him as. And I agree with Sam. He's a phenomenal player and he's a phenomenal guy. But if you're the Chiefs, this was the right play all along. And it's the right play because of what happened before. Like, I still think Nick Bolton's contract was a mistake. I still think Trey Smith's contract was a mistake. But you're also talking about those contracts coming at a time when they're feeling themselves and feeling good about winning Super Bowls and doing all this stuff. When you're 6-11, you got to be a lot more realistic about, just with Jalen Watson, how much is this guy changing the win column for us? And at $30 million a year, that's not something you should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think that I joked. I think what was it last week or maybe it was Tuesday that we've signed so many other Chiefs players between the three of us if they don't have Trey Smith and Nick Bolton on the books. But to me, this free agency year is the year where I think you could have done something different if those contracts were on your books. And I don't think that signing Trent McDuffie to $31 million is the something different that they should have prioritized. Because one of the things about this trade is you took advantage of where you're strong, which is drafting cornerbacks and developing cornerbacks. And I think what you should do in free agency is find out where you're weak. And it's getting better offensive weapons. It's getting receivers. And, I guess I would rather have like Romeo Doubs at 17 million with the Chiefs roster, with the Chiefs situation, with that Trey Smith money or with that Nick Bolton money than signing Trent McDuffie for and there's other examples out there too, but I'm just throwing out one name.
And you mentioned the wide receiver position. I mean, it is expensive. I mean, that's just one thing. I mean, I think the Chiefs, I would think it's fair to say the Chiefs have been taken a little off guard about how expensive the receiver position has gotten, right? Like, I mean, they spent on the offensive line and now they're going, wow, I got to pay this for a 3. I got to pay this for a 2. And ones don't make it out there. I think there's a little bit of sticker shock when it comes to that. The 22 draft class has moved on. We'll talk about what exactly that class was. We'll also talk about where the Chiefs go in the draft after you hear from our friends at Italian Delight. Italian Delight was the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. They sell whole pies or pizza by the slice, or enjoy their classic strombolis, calzones, and sausage rolls. Sandwich lovers, check out their lineup of hot and cold subs, the combo, the meatball, or the Philly cheesesteak, just to name a few. And don't forget the pasta. Their famous lasagna and classic chicken Alfredo always hit the spot. And if you're hungry for lunch, check out their daily lunch specials, starting at under $10. Italian Delight can even cater your next work function or party. Dine in, carry out, or delivery, it's Italian Delight. Located just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway at 8145 State Ave in KCK. Check out the menu and order online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Kansas City's own Italian Delight. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is looking to grow their team. If you have heavy construction foreman experience with heavy equipment, asphalt or concrete labor, or just want to learn a new trade, contact Gann Asphalt and Concrete to join their team today. Top of the market pay, company provided insurance, and paid time off and holiday pay are just a few of the great reasons to join Gann's expanding team. Learn more about this great opportunity with Gann at GannAsphalt.com/careers. That's GannAsphalt.com/careers. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. I believe the number for the amount of contracts that the 2022 draft class signed is upwards of around $250 million.
It's 258.
258. Okay, $258 million. Now $124 million of that is tied up in one guy, in Trent McDuffie. But Like, let's take a moment to acknowledge just how good Sam, you talked about moving on from that 22 class is a big moment. It is. It was also one of their more impressive, draft hauls ever. And one of the key reasons, it's a reason to go, this team was 6-11 last year with these guys. And now a lot of them are leaving. All of them are leaving, except George Karlaftis. This is a big loss, and it was a great draft for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, when you include Karlaftis' extension that he got in training camp, it's $350 million. And I attempted and failed to be able to find a way to look this up, but I'm guessing that 350 million, just the total number, not the amount of cap space, but the total number of $350 million is about the most ever for a non-quarterback second contract of a draft class. First of all, they have the advantage that there's more guys in that, but I mean, the highest paid cornerback, a pretty good paid edge rusher, pretty good paid safety. I mean, it's a terrific draft class. And that's where I actually found some irony yesterday when Kenneth Walker walked into the room, because he was a member of the 2022 draft class. So here comes one member in as 8 members of that class are leaving. But I also thought that was sort of symbolic of where the Chiefs are, as Kenneth Walker's here to be the supporting cast for the quarterback. But meanwhile, the supporting cast for this last era is gone. And I think people need to realize like exactly how impactful the draft class was. As rookies, they combined for more than 3,000 snaps. And when you do the math on it, the Chiefs on average, when these guys were rookies, averaged 3 defensive rookies on the field that year. This last year, that group that we mentioned in the last segment, on average, 4 of those guys were on the field on every defensive play. Like, this is a lot that the Chiefs have to replace. And I know that Trent McDuffie is the headline, but there's a lot of pieces to what the Chiefs were doing well for a long time, especially on a defense that we've all talked about. It can be complicated for some people to learn. These guys had it down.
What's the lesson the Chiefs took away from the 22 class, Jeff? I mean, one of the things I know that they were quoted as saying in the Kingdom documentary was that, like, it wasn't necessarily that they set out to draft all this defense. That's just how the board fell, right? Okay. Then let that be your guiding light. Like, be in a position. Like, that's one thing I will take away. If that is an honest assessment and they didn't set out to draft defense and just got a little bit lucky. I mean, I think, it makes you sound better to say, well, we just read the board and we pivoted everywhere we needed to pivot, and it just ended up being defense. That's the best. That makes you sound the best. But if it's 100% honest, it's one of the things that this free agency period now needs to accomplish. So you don't go into the draft going, we have to get this. And we all feel like they have to get an edge. It's going to make it harder to draft the way they did in that 22 draft class if they are going into this 26 draft saying, well, we have a couple things we have to get somewhere.
Yeah, well, for me, the lesson is, I think, just as with any great draft classes, you have to have the right mix of talent coming in the door, but you also have what's in the room already, in the building already, be special. And so when these guys showed up, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones were at the height of their superpowers. And it made it easier for these guys to develop. Let's not forget, some of these guys didn't all just start off like gangbusters killing it. Jalen Watson wasn't playing that great for a long period of time. Brian Cook wasn't playing that great for a long period of time. Obviously, Sky Moore didn't even work out. And so, to me, it's more important that the people who are here, well, that's the Rashee Rices, the Xavier Worthies, who else could you throw in that boat? The Nick Boltons. Those kind of guys have to play at a higher level to make it easier for the next group coming in, right? Because if they don't, then you end up with a lot more of an underwhelming result. And so I think, to me, it's like they even think about Jalen Watson having the time to develop because L'Jarius Sneed became a stud player for this team, right? If you were asking him to be a stud a couple of years ago, it wouldn't have been the same result. And that's big. I think about the Saints, their 2016 draft class that was Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara and Ryan Ramczyk and Trey Hendrickson, and that they had a great run, but then once those guys were done, it didn't look so great. And so I think they have to be mindful of getting this kind of talent again with the numbers they have, but also keep in mind that the guys who are here, some of these guys got to grow up and do more.
Yeah, the numbers they have 9 picks, Sam. They have 9 picks this year. They had 12 going into this draft class. They moved up a couple of times, maybe more than a couple. Might have to go back and look at all of them. And they ended up with 10 players. If people don't remember, Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis in the first. They moved up to get McDuffie. Sky Moore and Brian Cook in the second. Sky Moore didn't work out. You don't feel as bad when Brian Cook becomes one of the better safeties in football. Leo Chenal in the third. Josh Williams in the fourth. Darian Kennard, who actually is playing for the Packers right now, did not work out for the Chiefs, but he was the 5th round pick. And then 3 7th rounders, which they hand out like it's nobody's business. They gave away a 6th rounder to move into the 7th round. They gave away next year's 6th to move into the 7th round to draft Bo Pete Keys, Tharkarius Keys back in 2020. That's how much they value those 7th rounders. But they're 3 7th rounders: Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Najee Johnson. I mean, that is a great draft. And one of the reasons it's great, you don't mind that Darian Kennard washed out. You don't mind that Josh Williams was kind of the bottom of your cornerback depth most of the time. You don't mind that Sky Moore, when it's all said and done, when assessing this class didn't work out, because you had 7 other players and you had the volume to create value.
Yeah, they were also – this is the similarity to me in the position they're in. First of all, they have more draft capital overall than what they had in 2022. Like, this is really their first opportunity to fully repeat what they did in 2022, knowing that it's going to be really hard to replicate what they did in that draft. But the other similarity is just where the rest of the roster is. Jeff made a great point about the leadership being in that I hadn't thought about. I think that's a terrific point of what environment these guys are coming into. But depth chart wise, your draft picks are going to have to play. We just talked about some things at the top of the show about what the Chiefs still need to accomplish. And it's becoming more and more clear that some of this is going to have to be accomplished through the draft. Those guys are going to have to play. And you wonder about the correlation between preparedness to play with this group that just made $350 million, including Karlaftis, versus they had to play and therefore they improved, and therefore they got better, and therefore the experience led them to where they were over these last 7 days and signing this money. And that's the similarity in the situation the Chiefs are going to be in now is whoever they draft 9, whoever they draft 29, whoever they draft 41, those guys got to be ready to go. Like, there's not going to be a lot of time for patience because this depth chart as it stands now doesn't allow for that patience.
Yeah, and really, I was going to say too, the leadership part of this too. A lot of those guys were the last real connection to that, to the heart of that dynasty, right? Most of the guys who left showed up and benefited from being a part of it, but they weren't really the guys driving the bus. These guys walking out the door knew what it took to be that great.
I actually wondered whenever the initial 53 comes out in August, when we go through and see how many guys on the team have won a Super Bowl, because my guess is that the number is going to be less than we think, even though the Chiefs are only, will only have 2 seasons without a Super Bowl. I think we could see somewhere of, 40% of the roster hasn't actually won one, something of that nature.
Maybe higher.
Yeah, I think more than that, because I'm looking at offense. Like, I'll just it's a pretty easy game to play here real quick. I mean, Rashee Rice was there for one. I don't think anyone's talking leadership with him, but he was there. Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Noah Gray. I don't know that Wanya Moore should not survive another camp, but he has a ring. But I think there's a good chance that they replace him. But that, I think, is it. On the offensive side of the ball, those 6 players. On the defensive side of the ball,
was Nico on there?
He's not still with the team though, is he?
Yeah. They re-upped his exclusive
brought him back.
rights. I think maybe he was on just the practice squad that year.
I'll count him 7. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones. Did Tranquil grab? He was on the.
Yeah.
He got
Tranquil,
one.
Bolton,
Tranquil, Bolton.
Connor was there.
Rookie.
That's 5. Did Hicks, was he on the roster?
No.
For the last
3rd year.
No.
Okay, so 5 on the defensive side of the ball. Then Harrison Tucker, Winchester, Ariza was not. So 13, 14?
Yeah, man.
Players total. I mean, the turnover on a roster, nobody really realizes it because it's never 50 of 53, but it's always like 15 of 53.
And because this team keeps its head coach and keeps its quarterback and keeps its star tight end, keeps its star defensive tackle. So I think a lot of people just think same group.
Yeah.
And
it's not.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's going to be a lot of these. And, we talked about this, I think, at one point, but there's a lot of guys who came into this thing and I think felt part of the dynasty when they hadn't really done anything to contribute to it yet. And you come in, you've got the ESPN documentary going on, and suddenly, you're part of it. And you've got to contribute to it now. And man, when you've got that few of guys that have been part of the reason that this thing has been called a dynasty, there should be a lot of guys that have a wake-up call that they've got to do their part if they want to get back to where they had been.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, because I got the feeling that, like, Xavier Worthy strikes me as one of those guys.
Yep.
Like, and college, you hear it more with college coaches. When a team wins a championship, they usually then get a great recruiting class. Back in the day when it wasn't just about money, like everybody wants to go play for the champion, and they come in and they're a championship player, right? And that they don't understand all the work that needed to be done, and it's on the seniors to tell them what it was like and how they worked for 3 or 4 years to get to that point, to be a champion and do all that kind of stuff. I mean, Xavier Worthy came in. I've always had the feel, not that he's a bad guy, but that, like, yeah, I'm a champion, and he needs to be hungry, right, to produce. He needs to be hungry to produce statistically, and that's where the contract year is now. He's not at it, but he'll be at it the following year. And right now, what if Xavier Worthy were a free agent right now? What kind of contract are you throwing at Xavier Worthy? I mean, at some point, hopefully that is the incentive as well. Like, a lot of guys haven't done anything just to elevate themselves as a player, let alone be a champion.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the production that Romeo Doubs does, and Doubs has never had a 1,000-yard season. I think he's averaged about 700-800 yards a season. Wide receivers make something. Like, he'd get picked up and make something, but he's not cashing in huge money, relatively speaking, to what the wide receiver market is.
Yeah.
Good, Jeff.
I was going to say too, and they've been. We'll see if some of these free agents coming in here bring some of that fire. I mean, I think you obviously when Tyrann Mathieu showed up, he brought a lot of leadership and energy. I think Justin Reed did the same thing when he came to town, but it's hard to get that. And it's just, I think about this class as well. This 22 class, final point is that when they showed up, they were coming off AFC Championship loss, butts kicked by the Buccaneers a year earlier. That group was hungry, and they got to feel that, and they got to bring it back, right? They got to be a part of something that was historic. But Sam's right. Like, the guys who are here now, yeah, we got to go play New Orleans against the Eagles. We got beat, 6-11, and a lot more guys got a lot more agendas now, and that's hard to build a championship team like that.
Can I point out that we missed a very obvious name to add to the list, which is Kenneth Walker has also won the Super Bowl. And disappointed in our comment. I'm going to call out our comments section because this is the exact type of stuff they correct us on, and they're nowhere to be seen on that one.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so bite it, Tommy. Where were you on correcting us on that? So where do they go with those first 3 picks, Jeff? I mean, what do you think 9, 29, and 40 look like now that the bulk of the free agent lifting has been done?
I think it's going to be premier players. And I go back to what Brett Veach was saying at the Combine, and he talked about both free agency and the draft. He made a point about talking about how hard it is to get players at the premium positions. And so when you have an opportunity to get them, because they're not coming up in free agency, if they do come up, they cost a lot. And so I'm thinking edge has got to be there. Obviously, I think receivers got to be in that conversation, and I think corner's going to be in that conversation. I think those 3. I'd be surprised if there wasn't one of those 3. If all 3 weren't part of that combination.
Sam, what are you feeling like with those first few picks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks like they think that they can solve edge and get some help at receiver in the draft. And this is where it goes back to the tight spot that the Chiefs have been in. And I think maybe it signals these weird scenarios, what they would do in them, the weird scenarios that we had prompted, what was it, like a week or 2 ago, of like, what if the best player on the board's a safety? What if the best player on the board's a linebacker? What if the best player on the board's a running back? I think what the Chiefs have done so far signals is that, nope, going with the premium position. And if it's for the reason that Jeff mentioned, is this free agency market has just reiterated, not illuminated, but reiterated what we already knew, which is these positions are just unbelievable money in free agency. You've got to solve them during the draft.
Yeah, and which means that they're not necessarily adhering to what they said was the key to the 2022 draft class. They're going in with an agenda. And so if those edges all fly off the board, then what do? Right? Are you trading back and getting somebody that's second tier, still a good player, but is second tier, or are you moving up because you're all in on the edge? And holy cow, they just went 2 and 4, and we've got 3 guys earmarked as ones. We got to get up to like 6 or 7, like, because 8, 9 are or they're 9, 7, 8 are problems, to take this player. So we've got to go do it. Yeah, I think edge, wide out, corner, D tackle. I think the one thing I will say is they have so many needs that, like, they're at premium spots.
Yeah.
That they could live up to that. Like, okay, we're taking premium spots and still be pretty flexible on what they're doing, because they do need all of those positions. And so from that standpoint, they'll be filling a need whichever one they take. But I'd still look at it and trade back. Seems to be like the best plan, because they need volume. And while you may not, you're not going to get Derek Thomas at pick 16, 17, 18, but you can get George Karlaftis there. And I think another George Karlaftis and then another, good defensive tackle into the rotation. All of a sudden the defense looks a lot better if they can actually pressure the quarterback and have lots of people. Then it's not all on Chris Jones, then, you can scheme a little bit more on getting there. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting what they do up at the top. So we'll see. Listen, you can always support the Red, Gold, and Bold. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow. Tell your friends about it. Of course, also our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Remember, one contractor, all things parking lot. If you own or manage a business, no matter what it is, simple signage, striping, maybe concrete bumpers to building that parking lot from new. They did parking lots as big as the Liberty Memorial. They can do any job you need when it comes to parking lots. Northland Injury Law has been Kansas City's go-to for accident lawyers for more than 40 years. Voted the #1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. Text HURT to 22222 if you have a case, or call the great folks at Northland Injury Law by calling 816-400-HURT. And our buddies at Italian Delight, Renee and his great staff, are absolutely fantastic. They got lunch specials starting at under $10, just a few miles east of the Speedway at State Avenue, 8145 State Avenue. You can find them online at ItalianDelightKS.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Sam McDowell, he writes for the Kansas City Star. I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold.